In psychology, it is said that people do not close themselves off from the world because they enjoy being alone, but because at some point they stopped feeling safe being themselves. This is one of the hardest truths. Withdrawal is not born from preference, it is born from protection. A closed heart is not a sign of disinterest in life, but a scar, a quiet survival strategy that once helped a person endure what felt unbearable. When someone begins to close in on themselves, it is rarely sudden. It is like building a fortress brick by brick. At first the walls are thin, just a little silence after being hurt, a little distance after being misunderstood. But over time the walls grow higher, the doors acquire locks and the windows are covered. The person learns that hiding what they truly feel keeps them safer than showing it. The logic is simple. If I don't reveal my feelings, no one can use them again. Yet behind those same walls, not only pain is locked away, but warmth, closeness, and authentic connection too. The origins of this often lie in childhood. A child proudly shows their drawing, hoping for praise, but instead hears, "That's wrong, you did it badly." Another child shares their excitement, only to be met with indifference. A little boy cries, but instead of comfort he is told, "Stop crying, be strong." A little girl expresses fear but is dismissed with, "Don't be silly, nothing's wrong." Each of these moments plants a seed. My emotions are unsafe. It is better to hide them. By the teenage years, those seeds have grown into habits. When a young person tries to share pain and is mocked, or when they try to be vulnerable and are ignored, they learn to pull back. The lesson becomes etched deep inside. If I show myself, I will be hurt. If I stay silent, I survive. Closing off means more than being quiet, it means no longer allowing oneself to be real. A closed person often wears a mask. They smile when they want to cry, they agree when they disagree, they stay silent when their soul wants to scream. From the outside, they might look calm, reserved, even self-sufficient. But on the inside, there is constant tension. Hiding feelings is not effortless, it takes energy. Every suppressed emotion is like a weight carried in secret, and the more weights accumulate, the heavier life feels. This is why withdrawal is not laziness nor coldness. It is exhaustion. Imagine trying to hold a door shut against a storm day after day. That is what it feels like to keep emotions locked inside. The world may see only the door still, firm, unmoving. But inside there is chaos, noise, wind, and rain pressing against it. And the longer this continues, the more tired the person becomes. At its core, shutting down is about lost trust. People do not build walls because they hate connection. They build them because, in their experience, connection was unsafe. Again and again they faced misunderstanding, rejection, indifference. Eventually the inner voice whispers, "Enough. No one will ever see what's truly inside me again." And that whisper becomes a vow. Silence feels like the only way to survive. When a person closes in on themselves, the consequences are not always visible right away. To others, it may look like nothing has changed. They still show up, they still smile, they still play their role in conversations. But inside, something begins to fracture. With every hidden feeling, every silenced truth, a gap grows between the person they are and the person they allow others to see. That gap becomes a heavy secret to carry, and over time, it reshapes almost every part of life. One of the first consequences is the erosion of self-esteem. When you constantly tell yourself, "My emotions are too much, my thoughts don't matter, my true self isn't safe," it chips away at your inner sense of worth. You may still function, you may still achieve, but deep down you begin to doubt. Would anyone really want me if they knew who I am underneath? This doubt doesn't stay confined to private moments. It spreads into every interaction. Compliments are brushed off, kindness feels suspicious, and opportunities are questioned as mistakes. The more you withdraw, the more you believe the withdrawal is justified. Closing off also changes how a person behaves in relationships. Instead of showing their real needs, they become hyper-focused on others. They listen, they support, they comfort, but rarely share what's going on inside themselves. At first, this may make them seem like the perfect friend or partner, always present and dependable. But over time, an imbalance grows. Relationships become one-sided, with the closed-off person giving endlessly while starving for reciprocity. And because they never voice their own struggles, their friends and loved ones may not even realize how lonely they feel. Another consequence is emotional numbness. When feelings are hidden long enough, the person doesn't just hide sadness or fear. They begin to dull joy as well. The same armor that blocks pain also blocks warmth. Life starts to feel flat, like colors fading to gray. They may still laugh at a joke, but the laughter doesn't reach their chest. They may still celebrate milestones, but the celebration feels hollow. And when joy is muted, the world feels like a place to endure, not to live in. The body does not escape this burden either. Psychology and medicine both confirm that unprocessed emotions turn into physical symptoms. Anxiety creeps in, disguised as a racing heart or restless sleep. Muscles stay tense, as if the body itself is bracing for impact. Chronic headaches, stomach pain, or fatigue may appear without clear medical cause. These are not random. They are the body's way of saying, "What you silence in your mind, I will speak through your skin, your nerves, your blood." Closing off may feel safe for the heart, but the body ends up carrying the weight. Perhaps the most tragic effect of withdrawal is what it does to trust. Once you stop trusting others with your emotions, you slowly stop trusting yourself. You second-guess every instinct. Am I overreacting? Should I just stay quiet? Maybe my feelings don't matter at all. This constant self-doubt builds a cage inside the mind. It convinces you that your perception is flawed, that you cannot rely on your own truth. Without trust in yourself, every decision feels shaky, every step feels uncertain. Over time, closing off shapes your identity. You stop introducing yourself as a whole person. Instead, you present fragments: the polite version, the strong version, the agreeable version. The real self, with all its contradictions and vulnerabilities, is hidden away. But a hidden self does not disappear. It waits, it aches, it grows restless. The longer it is silenced, the more alien you feel in your own skin. It becomes possible to be surrounded by people and yet feel like a stranger in your own life. Relationships pay the highest price. Closeness cannot survive without vulnerability. You may sit at the same table, share the same bed, even live in the same house, but if your heart is locked behind walls, there will always be distance. Friends sense it in your silence. Partners feel it in your detachment. They may not know what's wrong, but they sense the absence of something vital, the real you. This absence can slowly erode even the strongest bonds. It doesn't always happen with fights or breakups. Sometimes it happens quietly, through emotional disconnection. Socially, closing off can make the world feel smaller. Invitations are declined because you don't feel like you belong. Opportunities are ignored because you don't believe you deserve them. Over time, isolation stops being a choice and becomes the default. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, until the walls you built to keep others out also keep you trapped inside. The paradox is painful. The walls you thought would protect you from rejection end up creating the very loneliness you feared. And yet, the outside world rarely notices. To others, you may look calm, quiet, even strong. They may think you simply prefer solitude. They don't see the storm behind the stillness, the exhaustion behind the smile, the yearning hidden under the silence. The more invisible your pain is, the deeper it cuts. Because what hurts most is not just that you feel alone, it's that no one even knows you're struggling. In psychology, one of the most painful paradoxes is the inner conflict of those who close themselves off. Deep down, every human being longs for connection, to be seen, heard, and accepted. But for someone who has learned that openness leads to hurt, this longing exists side by side with fear. The result is a constant tug-of-war inside, one part of the heart reaching outward, another part pulling back into silence. This conflict is not abstract. It plays out in daily life in 1,000 small ways. A person may want to text a friend, "I'm struggling, can we talk?" But instead they erase the message and type something casual. "How are you?" They may want to share a story at the dinner table, but halfway through speaking, they convince themselves no one is interested and let their voice trail off. They may crave company, but when invited out, they say, "I'm tired, maybe next time." Each of these choices feels safer in the moment, but each one deepens the sense of invisibility. Psychologists often call this approach avoidance conflict, the desire to move closer and the urge to pull away happening simultaneously. It creates a life lived in between, not fully connected but not fully alone either. You sit in a group but feel separate. You want to love but fear being rejected. You want to open up but fear being misunderstood. And so you remain suspended, never fully inside, never fully outside. The body reflects this war as well. When you want to speak, your throat tightens. When you want to stay, your legs feel restless, ready to leave. The heart speeds up not only in danger but also in anticipation of closeness. For someone who has been hurt, intimacy itself feels like a threat. The nervous system cannot tell the difference between the risk of physical harm and the risk of emotional harm. Both trigger the same alarm. So even when nothing is wrong, the body is bracing, as if waiting for the moment when trust will collapse again. Another layer of this struggle is self-doubt. When you live behind walls, you lose practice in showing your real self. Then when the urge to connect arises, you question whether you have anything worth sharing. You replay every word in your head. Did I sound stupid? Did I say too much? Did I say too little? The mind becomes its own critic, editing every attempt at connection until the safest option feels like silence. And silence, once again, reinforces the belief. No one really wants to hear me. Perhaps the cruelest part is that this conflict often remains invisible to others. Friends may think they're just quiet or they like their space. They may never realize that behind the quiet is a scream, behind the distance is longing, behind the smile is fear. The closed-off person may desperately wish for someone to notice, but at the same time, they would deny it if asked. They want help but fear accepting it. They want love but fear depending on it. They want to be known but fear exposure. This contradiction shapes the very way a person sees themselves. You begin to believe that you are inherently divided. Part of you is warm and full of love, but the world will never see it. Part of you is cautious and guarded, and that is all others will ever know. Over time, you start to identify with the guarded part, convincing yourself, "I'm just not made for closeness. I'm not the kind of person who belongs." But in truth, it is not your nature speaking, it is your fear. Inside this struggle, loneliness takes on a unique form. It is not the loneliness of being alone in a room. It is the loneliness of being in a room full of people and still feeling absent. It is the pain of watching others laugh, knowing you have a laugh inside you too, but being unable to let it out. It is the ache of hearing, "You can talk to me anytime," but never believing it enough to try. This is not emptiness, it is presence trapped behind glass. What makes this conflict especially exhausting is its endless repetition. Each time you withdraw, you promise yourself, "Next time I'll be braver." But when next time comes, the same fear returns and the same silence follows. It feels like running on a treadmill, always moving, never arriving. This cycle drains energy, leaving you tired not just of people but of yourself. And yet, the desire to connect never fully dies. Even in the deepest silence, the heart whispers, "I want to be known." Even when fear wins again and again, hope lingers in small ways. The saved draft of a message you never sent, the story you practiced telling in your head, the thought, "Maybe someday, with the right person, I can let this out." This hope is proof that the real self, the open, warm, vulnerable self, is still alive beneath the walls. It is waiting, aching, pressing against the glass, longing for a moment of safety strong enough to break through. When the walls a person builds become too high, the cost of living behind them grows unbearable. At first, closing off may feel protective, a safe distance from pain, judgment, and disappointment. But over time, that protection hardens into isolation. The fortress that once shielded you from the outside world slowly turns into a prison that keeps you locked away from everything your heart still longs for. Isolation does not always appear dramatic. It often begins subtly. You decline one invitation because you feel tired. You skip another gathering because you don't feel like it. Soon the habit forms. Why go at all? I'll just feel out of place. What once was a choice becomes an automatic response. Weeks turn into months and the space between you and others widens until reconnecting feels impossible. The paradox is cruel. The walls you built to avoid rejection create the very loneliness you feared most. Psychologically, prolonged withdrawal often leads to emotional breakdowns. A person can only hold so much inside before the silence begins to crack under its own weight. This can appear as sudden outbursts, anger that seems disproportionate, tears that arrive without warning, anxiety that floods the body without clear cause. These are not random, they are the echoes of everything that was never said. The nervous system eventually rebels against the endless suppression, forcing the body to express what the mind refused to. For others, the breakdown is quieter. It appears as numbness, the inability to feel much of anything at all. The person no longer cries, but they no longer truly laugh either. Joy feels muted, love feels distant, life feels flat. This numbness is not peace. It is the nervous system's last line of defense. It is as if the body says, if every feeling is dangerous, I will shut them all down. But in shutting down, it silences not only pain, but the very experiences that make life meaningful. The cost of closing off for too long also shows up in relationships. Partners may sense the distance and misinterpret it as disinterest. Friends may stop reaching out, assuming you prefer to be left alone. Family may describe you as independent, never realizing that independence was born from fear, not freedom. Slowly, bonds unravel, not with fights or betrayal, but with silence. What breaks the relationship is not conflict, but absence. This absence reshapes identity. The more you hide, the more you begin to believe you have nothing to share. The thought creeps in. Maybe I am simply too much for others, or maybe I am not enough at all. This is how isolation transforms from a strategy into a self-fulfilling prophecy. You withdraw to protect yourself, but the withdrawal convinces you that you were never worthy of connection in the first place. The physical body continues to carry the toll. Prolonged isolation and suppressed emotion can manifest as chronic fatigue, unexplained aches, insomnia, and even weakened immunity. Scientists have shown that loneliness activates the same parts of the brain as physical pain. In other words, isolation hurts the body as much as it hurts the mind. The fortress is not only emotional, it becomes biological. Perhaps the deepest cost is spiritual, the quiet erosion of hope. When you live behind walls for too long, the belief begins to form. This is who I am now. I am someone who cannot connect. This belief is devastating because it convinces you that change is impossible. The longer it takes root, the harder it becomes to imagine breaking free. You may even begin to romanticize your isolation, telling yourself you are simply different or destined to be alone. But beneath those rationalizations, the truth remains. The closed-off heart still aches for warmth, even if it no longer admits it. And yet, even in the darkest moments of withdrawal, there are cracks in the walls. The unsent message, the memory of laughter, the ache when you see others embrace. These are signs that the longing for connection has not died. The walls may be high, but they are not indestructible. The human heart was not built for permanent isolation. No matter how heavy the silence becomes, a part of you still listens for the sound of someone knocking. In psychology, it is said that healing begins the moment we stop running from ourselves. For those who have closed themselves off, who have built walls and locked doors, this truth can feel terrifying. The fortress has become familiar. Silence has become safe. To imagine stepping outside feels like exposing yourself to the very dangers you tried to escape. And yet the paradox remains. What once kept you alive is now what keeps you from truly living. The path out is not a dramatic leap, but a series of small, deliberate steps. The first step is awareness. You must begin by noticing the walls you've built. It is easy to believe I am just a private person, or I don't need anyone. But when you look closer, you see that your solitude is not born from preference but from pain. Naming this truth is powerful. I close myself off because I was hurt, but I still long for connection. With awareness, the silence is no longer invisible, it becomes something you can work with. The second step is self-compassion. People who withdraw often punish themselves for it. They say, I'm weak. I should be better at relationships. I'm broken. But psychology shows that withdrawal is not weakness, it is survival. You did what you had to do to protect yourself. Instead of self-blame, offer yourself kindness. I survived. I did what was necessary, and now I can learn new ways to live. Self-compassion creates a safe inner space, a foundation for all the steps that follow. The third step is small acts of openness. You do not need to pour out your soul in one moment. Start with something simple, answering honestly when someone asks, "How are you?" Instead of saying, "I'm fine," try, "It's been a hard day." This tiny act may feel vulnerable, but it is the seed of connection. Over time, these small truths add up. Each one weakens the walls just a little, reminding you that honesty can bring closeness, not just pain. Another powerful tool is choosing safe people. Not everyone deserves access to your vulnerability. In the past, perhaps you shared with people who mocked, dismissed, or ignored you. That taught you to hide. But part of healing is recognizing that not all people are the same. Seek out those who listen without judgment, who make space for your feelings, who show consistency. Start with one person. Even one safe connection can begin to rewrite the story in your mind. It is possible to be myself and still be accepted. Healing also requires reframing vulnerability. Many believe vulnerability means weakness, but psychology reminds us it is strength. To be vulnerable is to stand in front of the world without armor and say, "This is who I am." That is courage. Every time you let down your guard, even a little, you practice bravery. Vulnerability is the bridge to intimacy, to belonging, to love. Without it, connection cannot grow. With it, life regains its depth. There is also the practice of reconnecting with the body. Because closing off doesn't only silence emotions, it lodges them in the body. Tension in the chest, knots in the stomach, insomnia at night, these are the physical echoes of emotional walls. Practices like mindful breathing, journaling, or simply pausing to ask, "What am I feeling right now?" can help. When the body feels safe again, the heart follows. The process is slow and setbacks are part of the journey. There will be days when you try to open up and feel misunderstood again. The instinct to retreat will return. But healing is not about perfection, it is about persistence. Each time you try again, you prove to yourself that the past does not have to define the future. Over time, the rewards of opening are profound. Relationships grow richer. Conversations feel lighter. The laughter you once muted feels genuine again. You discover that connection doesn't mean losing yourself, it means expanding yourself. The walls begin to crumble, not in one dramatic collapse, but in a quiet, steady dismantling. Brick by brick, silence gives way to voice. Most importantly, you begin to rediscover your true self, the part of you that was hidden for so long, the child who once longed to be heard, the teenager who wanted to belong, the adult who still carries those unmet needs. That self has never disappeared, it has only been waiting for safety. And when you begin to let it emerge, life takes on new colors. You feel more alive, more authentic, more free. Psychology teaches that we are not meant to live behind walls forever. Belonging is not earned by perfection, it is a birthright. You matter, not because you hide your flaws, but because you exist. Healing means stepping into this truth. I am allowed to be seen. I am allowed to be heard. I am allowed to be me. The fortress is heavy, but it is not permanent. The silence has lasted long, but it is not eternal. The door is still there, waiting to be opened from the inside. And the moment you take that step, no matter how small, you discover what you feared you lost. Connection, love, and the simple, profound relief of no longer being alone.